I love to make a bolognese sauce, which is a sauce that has heavy meat in it. And I like to layer that with my lasagna. So when I do make that, I do make a bit more because we always like to have that extra for the top. Okay, so I don't have fresh tomatoes on hand to just do all that and cook them down. So I get a really good brand of tomatoes that are crushed. I just like the 100% natural, and I used the Hunt's this time, crushed tomatoes. And also, I add a can of tomato sauce, and this just happens to be with natural sea salt. So that was fine. Those 2 cans, good olive oil, and I mean really, really good olive oil. The kind that has that beautiful golden green color, 100% pure cold press olive oil. Good cheese. Now, but to make this bolognese sauce, here's what I think the secret is, one of the secrets. Parmesan Reggiano cheese that you get in a block that you grate yourself, because grated cheese fresh is so good, and Parmesan Reggiano has a really sweet, nutty flavor to it, and I love it. I might even say it's just the sweetness about it. It's not sharp, it's not pungent. And so I absolutely love this cheese, and I think it's one of the main secrets. The second secret is what I talked about, being the olive oil. And then you'll need an onion, tomato paste, and fresh garlic chopped up or diced up in a little jar that you can just add, whatever your preference is. Ricotta cheese. I don't use cottage cheese. I use whole milk ricotta cheese. Egg, a couple of eggs depending on the amount of ricotta that you're using, and your own seasoning. Now, this is olive oil. It's called tree olive, and this is extra virgin olive oil, and you want to make sure you get extra virgin olive oil. And of course you can't see what the olive oil looks like in this can, but if it says extra virgin olive oil, first cold press, you know you've have a really, really good olive oil. And this sweet olive oil was a gift to me from Tree Olive, from my son, daughter-in-law, and my granddaughter. And what it is, or what the gift was, which was over a year ago, I actually got a photo of this tree in an olive grove in Italy, and the fruit on that tree, and right there you can see that there is a tag. It has my name on it, because that following spring, when those olives were harvested from that tree, then I received 6 cans of olive oil from that tree in that grove. So for that 12 months, 10 months, whatever it was that I had to wait for those olives to be harvested, I had a tree, an olive tree in an olive grove in Italy, that those olives were picked from. And it was just the neatest gift that they got for me for my birthday, and it came packaged in this box with this photo. And of course, here's a big blow up showing the tag with my name on it. And so someday we said we are going to go there, and we are going to visit that olive grove. But that was awesome. So I used good, great, top of the line olive oil in my sauce. I like lasagna with a very hearty meat sauce, and for me, that's bolognese. The first thing I do is I brown my meat, and I brown that in a separate pan because I like to drain off any fat or grease that comes from the meat. And I don't use a mixture. I just get a good grade of, usually I use ground chuck. And so I brown it. I put lots of black pepper, a little bit of salt, not a whole lot, because I'm going to use a lot of cheese, and cheese already has plenty of salt in it. So I brown that and set it aside. And then in a really nice Dutch oven pot, I like to brown some quartered onions over low heat, just till it releases the flavor of the onions. I add a good tablespoon of chopped up garlic, and flavor it with the onions over very low heat. I let it just simmer over low heat for a little while. I don't want to burn the garlic, and I don't want to burn the onions. Now, I quarter the onions because I'm trying to flavor the olive oil, and I don't want it to burn, so I just do it nice and slow, and then I remove the onions and the garlic, and now the oil is very, very flavored. And then the next thing I do, I add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, a good brand of tomato paste. I don't use a tomato paste that is seasoned with basil or oregano, just plain old, good old-fashioned tomato paste. And I stir it around in the olive oil. Now, you're probably going to ask, how much olive oil are you using? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to use a good portion of olive oil, because you really need that to flavor those crushed tomatoes and the sauce. So I probably start with a little better than 1/4 of a cup, just to saute the onions, the garlic. And then I like to remove everything and add the tomato paste. And once I add the tomato paste, I just incorporate it into the oil. And then I bring it to a little bit of a simmer for just a couple of minutes. And then I add my crushed tomatoes, stir it around, and I add my tomato sauce. Now, once I do that, I add another big heaping, and I mean heaping, of black pepper, because we like that flavor. And you're going to be using a lot of meat. You're using crushed tomatoes and just basic sauce, so you need to really flavor it. So at that point, I add quite a bit of pepper ground up, and another little shot of salt. And I like to use kosher salt. You can use sea salt. Those two, I think, are the best salts to flavor everything that's incorporated. And then once I do that, I take my ground meat that I've already browned and drained, and I add it into that pot. And I stir it all around, and I eyeball things a lot, and I do a taste test, and at that point, I decide, do I need more salt? Do I need more pepper? And I just slowly incorporate those types of ingredients into the layering of the sauce. Now, at that point, after I have the crushed tomatoes, and I do use 28-ounce size cans, and the same for the sauce, then I will add about another 1/4 cup of olive oil. Now, all in all, that's about 1/2 cup for that amount of tomato sauce and crushed tomatoes. And it'll settle to the top, but once you stir it and it cooks in and incorporates it, you'll see how it'll just meld right into the meat and the sauce. And then I just let it simmer. Now, I let it simmer on low, and I keep the lid partially off, partially on. And I frequently stir it because I don't want any of the tomatoes to scorch at the bottom. And I just keep it over a very medium-low heat. I don't cook it all day long, and I don't cook it for hours. But I will tell you, I at least do simmer it for a good hour, hour and a half. And as it's cooking and I'm stirring it, I just recognize the color that I want. I want a deep, robust color. So I let this pot come to a simmer with just the tomatoes crushed, the sauce, the olive oil, the meat, for about a good 30 minutes. And then I add about 1 cup of wine. I like to use dark, sweet, red wine because we like our sauce a bit on the sweet side. So after it has simmered and all of those flavors start melding together, that's when I add a cup of wine. Now wine is pretty strong, so at that point I may add another shot of black pepper, just depends on what I'm seeing in the sauce product, and I let it simmer, continue to simmer for probably another 45 minutes. So all in all, I'm really simmering this pot for not more, I would say, hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. About the last 10 or 15 minutes that it's going to be on the simmer, I take a good helping of grated Parmesan Reggiano cheese, and that Parmesan Reggiano cheese I've grated is at least a good cup and a quarter to flavor that sauce. I just dump it in there, stir it all around, keep it on that really low simmer at this point for an additional 10 minutes. So cooking time altogether for my bolognese sauce, no more than an hour and a half. Hour and 45 minutes tops, that's it. So how to make the lasagna. I then take, I buy a big size ricotta, whole milk ricotta. I take half of that for a pound of lasagna. And the ground meat that I browned is usually about 1.5 pounds to this amount of sauce. And so I take half of that. I think it's, I don't know. I don't want to tell you wrong, but it's the largest ricotta you can get, and I use half of it, a little more than half. So I add another layering of little tiny bit of salt, pepper, a little bit of granulated garlic, and about 2 eggs. Mix it all up. I don't really want it runny. It depends on what the consistency is of the ricotta. So I start with 1 egg, whip it around. If I think it's too dry, I'll add a second. If not, then I just leave it at 1. And that's all I do to fix the ricotta. And then I take fresh mozzarella, usually the kind that comes in a ball in a container, or you can get the kind that comes wrapped in a seal, but you want fresh mozzarella, and I slice it up pretty thin. I don't grate it, but then I also buy an extra bag of grated mozzarella cheese as a filler in between. And so one of the tips that's new to me that I tried and it worked really, really good is I layered my hard noodles of lasagna noodles in a pan, a pretty big size roasting pan, just laid them out and poured boiling hot water that I heated up in my electric kettle until it covered the top. And I just let them sit in there, and the noodles were perfect. So after it sits in that hot water, I would just encourage you to flip each one of them over so that they don't stick on top of each other. And then I took that beautiful sauce, put a big layer on the bottom of a lasagna pan, and started using those noodles. And then I did the ricotta cheese, and I sprinkled Parmesan Reggiano on top of it, and then the fresh grated mozzarella, and a layer of sauce. And I kept doing that until I got to the top. So noodles, ricotta, grated mozzarella, fresh mozzarella, and any other seasoning that you want to add, and then sauce, and then start it over again. And then on the top, I really keep a good helping of the Parmesan Reggiano for the top, and I bake it 350 in the oven, covered for 40 minutes, and then I take it out, and what I do is I put fresh mozzarella sliced all on the top, and I stick it in under the broiler on low, and I stay right there and watch it as it melts and bubbles and turns a really beautiful golden color. And that's it. And you have yourself a delicious lasagna. Simple and easy. Couple of tips I think that help are the main ingredients: Parmesan Reggiano, olive oil, and just pour some boiling water over your noodles, and they work beautifully. And the noodles have a great sustenance to them. They're not mushy or soggy. They are perfect. Hope you enjoy it. Until next time, be kind, be humble, and age gracefully. Bye.